What would you do if a GC hasn't paid you in 200 days? Today, we're talking about the broken system for subcontractors, aka the subcontractors who are the backbone of American infrastructure and funding everybody's projects and still getting called unreliable. We've got Tara Cristel on the podcast today, co owner alongside her husband, running a subcontracting company. On today's episode, we dive into some war stories, some learnings, and a candid conversation with two subcontractors managing GC relationships, big jobs, bad terms, and everything to look out for. We hope you enjoy this episode. Let's get into it.
Well, Tara, why don't you tell us about what you do? We'll start there.
Okay, so first of all, I own a commercial glass and glazing subcontracting company with my husband. And through all of that and what that entails, I handle in our company the contract side of things, the financial side of things, all that good stuff. My husband does the field stuff, he project management. I help him with estimating, stuff like that. But we kind of have our own roles and do our own thing. And then in the midst of doing that, about 4 to 5 years in of our company that we've been running, I have learned all of the hard lessons of the financial part of the construction industry. And I had an epiphany about a month and a half ago that no matter how much money, because I think a lot of subcontractors have the idea that the more money they make, their problems will be solved. And
Mhm.
that is so far from the truth. And I had an aha moment. It's kind of like a bad relationship. All of a sudden you're like, oh no, I see this for what it is. And I had that happen. And in that moment, I was like, I am going to start saying all of this out loud because there's no way that this is the way that it really truly is. And it really is the way it truly is. But in that moment, I started what I call the subcontractor project. And it is a project that is aimed at, it's a mission of essentially getting to a point where subcontractors are paid in net 30 with undisputed payouts. And should be the standard. I don't understand why it's not the standard. There are things in place in this country as it is already that support that. It is possible, but it takes buy-in from everyone. So I am on a mission to talk about it until we get to that point.
So I think like one way to kind of bridge this, Sarah, is subcontractors are just working in a broken system. I think you've been
Mhm.
very vocal about it, and I think all of us on here and people listening can absolutely agree with that. But I think that the one thing that I appreciate about you coming on is you're in a situation where the GC is nearly 200 days late on a pay app.
Mhm.
Walk us through that. No need to say names or anything of that
Yep.
nature, but I want to learn about that because you're one of the few that is okay talking about it in the midst versus just showing the scar. And I think one thing that I do appreciate about you too is you're also thinking about ways that you're restructuring and rebuilding your company so that, the broken system's not just going to get resolved tomorrow. So it's like, how do we rebuild and restructure our company to thrive in a broken system while also pushing to make that change of, what you're so passionate about. But walk us through that 200 days. That's
200 days.
insanity.
It is insanity. So essentially, we had worked with this contractor a bit before, but they were always pretty small projects. So just one-off ones and maybe $10,000, $15,000. So the amount of money that we were doing and bringing in on those contracts were small. So he always did pay late. We always had to front materials ahead of time, that kind of stuff. But it didn't truly affect our company in a super negative way because they were small contracts. Well, fast forward a bit, and he offered us a contract that's probably upwards at this point with change orders and all of that. We're at about, it's probably valued at about 700,000. And the materials on the project itself are close to 500,000.
Wow.
And it became very clear when we got in this that he expected us to front all of that cost before we could get paid. And he said that we needed to provide lien waivers to prove that we had paid, and he would not release any money until
Hmm.
then. So I kind of at that time had realized that this was very backwards and this is not the way. And how in the world can my very small company front almost $500,000 worth of materials? And so I dug through our contract, which was shit. Sorry for that word, but it was shit. I stared at it for 10 minutes like, oh my God, I can't believe we signed this, you know? And essentially, I wasn't protected at all. What he was requiring wasn't necessarily in the contract either, but I also had nothing in there to protect myself from that.
Mm.
And we, to this day, have not received the payment for that pay app or the retainage that should have already been released on it. So we are at about, I believe at this point, about $150,000. And for a small subcontractor, that is, I don't even know what word to use except for devastating for cash flow. And cash flow is king. So that's super tricky. In the middle of all of that, of going through that battle, we do have like a payment bond lien on the project. We are still currently performing on it. We have a crew out there today still working on it, have not been paid, had paid all the labor, all the stuff. I've paid so far probably about $330,000 worth of the materials. I have about $77,000 left to pay. And I'm sticking to my guns that I'm not going to pay that until money moves towards me, because I just don't know how I can continue to go more in debt for that. You know what I'm saying? For this project when I'm already so much in debt for it. So we have our attorneys on it. We have a payment bond lien. We have all of that good stuff. But the problem with that, though, is it takes so much time. And the amount of money that I've had to pay my attorney in
Hmm.
this whole thing, has any margin that was on this project is absolutely gone. And I would say at this point, we are going in debt for the project.
So to summarize, for those people that didn't like, I think you said it, but you kind of glazed over it.
Mm-hmm.
This guy expects you to go to work, complete the entire project, front five, six, $700,000 of this, $750,000 project, and for you not to get one red cent until not only is it done, but you have paid your suppliers off.
Mm-hmm.
So like that piece, the piece that's missing, that I like, if people go quick, they're like, well, yeah, you pay your suppliers. No, this
Yep.
guy wants like lien waivers saying that everything's been paid before
Mm-hmm.
they cut you a check. That's like, I'll call it what it is. That's debilitating. It's like death. It's a death sentence to a small business,
It
what you're
is.
going through.
And on top of that, not only is it that, but it's also, there is no clear term when he will pay. The
Yeah.
contract is so unclear when payment will come. It always, the one this specifically is paid when paid. This specific general contractor has never given me, when I've asked that question, have you been paid by the owner? I have, to this day, and we've done work with them at this point for several years, I have never gotten a straight answer to that question. So not only do you want me to front all of the materials, but it's also for an undetermined amount of time with no recourse if you choose not to pay, at least not something that comes in a timely manner or something that's cost effective.
Wow. Yeah, that's I've been in situations that the contracts are poorly written,
Hmm.
but I've not been a half a mil deep, if
Yeah.
I'm being totally transparent and honest,
Yep.
right? Like that's, I think that you've become a bank, like you become a lender.
Hmm.
And that's the piece that I think a lot of people overlook in these scenarios is, how many employees are in your business, Tara?
We vary between 5 and 6, just depending on
Like
how many projects we have going on.
you're a bona fide small business, like
Hmm.
like small. You're not a medium, like you are a small business, and you're supporting 5 or 6 families, and that is, it's infuriating to me to hear these stories because the people that are above, until you don't know what you know, right? Until like you've
Hmm.
been in this situation and you're now finding out that like if you really go digging on this guy, this is not the first time he's done what he's doing, right?
Right.
And he knows that if he holds out long enough, he'll get a discount, and it probably works out better for him. And
Hmm.
it's infuriating because your family, you guys, are fronting this guy as a financial institution, and the reason he's doing that is likely, this is the hidden agenda, likely because he can't get it anywhere else. Right? That's the piece that I talk to people all the time. Like big contracts are great, but if people don't pay their bills fast, you've just bankrupted your business and you didn't know you were doing it.
That's
Right?
right.
Like it's, yeah. These are. So where do you go from here? Like, what do you do
So, okay.
outside of
So,
pay the
yeah,
attorney a bunch of money to send letters?
right. So, what actually got even trickier for us. So, in the midst of all of that, right before this happened, we had transitioned our banking to a different style, type of banking that we thought would bring cash flow into the company quicker, more efficiently. Well, on paper, it looked good. The reality of it was it wasn't really exactly what we needed it to be. So cash flow into the company was already starting to slow down because of that. And then the banker got wind that this general contractor was not paying, and the bank tightened up even more on cash flow coming into our company. So as I sit here talking to you guys today, for about the past 30 days in my company, I have not had access to any cash flow and money that I have sitting there that just I can't touch until this all gets worked out. So about a month ago is about when the time I started speaking up and started to finally say all the things. I had this huge aha moment of, oh no, we are in a terrible position. So we have two choices. We can close our company. I'm a little too tenacious for that. I can't let that one happen, you know. So I did a little bit of soul searching for a few days, and it was, this company is going to make it, but it absolutely will only move forward if certain things get put into place in this company. And it's the only way for it to operate. And luckily, I started speaking up on LinkedIn and became a little more vocal in the social media world on it. And that incited a crazy amount of people. You guys, I've talked to hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people at this point on this topic since I first made my first post or my first article or anything I've said. And the knowledge that I have learned in the short 4 weeks that I have been here is, oh, and I wouldn't say I'm embarrassed about the way that we ran our company before, because I don't know that I can think that the hard work we put into this is embarrassing. It's not embarrassing. It happens
Yeah.
to almost every single company, just like ours, just like yours, just like this is the blue collar trade. So just like, I mean, millions of them out there. It's the same damn story that I have. You get in it because you have hustle. You get in it because you have a skill to offer. You get in it because you want to leave a legacy for your family. So you just do it and you learn it. So it's not embarrassing that that happened. But there's a little bit of a level of embarrassment on just how uninformed I was on what I really should
Yeah.
have been doing, you know? So we really sat down. I have kind of come up with a framework for our company moving forward, and one that I would honestly, if I was consulting with another subcontractor or talking to my friend who wanted to start a company, or just any of these guys that I've been talking to or women I've been talking to, I would tell them the same exact thing, because I do think it's doable. I just think you have to be unapologetic about your business, and you have to be unapologetic about how you run your business. And you have to be okay to say, yeah, I don't think you're my customer, and that's just the
Yeah.
way it has to be. So,
Well, I think the same ego that gets us into business, because I think that's like for small business owners, this is the cycle I see is like I coach a lot of people, and usually it's like the guy I work for is an idiot, or the family I work for is just, I mean, if they can do this, like I could
yeah.
totally do this. And then our ego gets us in. And the thing you're talking about now is amazing, because the same ego that got you in is the very same character trait that's going to keep you trenched. Like you're going to stay through this and see this to the end. Um, that those opportunities that are desperate create a massive amount of movement. It creates ideas and innovation, and it just creates this this character that you have or you don't. Because like 9 out of 10 people when faced with this situation are like, this chapter 7 type stuff right here, I'm just going to
Yep.
go call it a day.
Yep.
Um, but it's great, because I bet today you write your contracts in a way that keep you safe, right? And I think that's the pendulum of human psychology, right? Like, okay, I got way over here, I'm probably going to swing too far, and somewhere between your new contract and where the old one was is like the sweet spot, right? And that iteration happens over the course of years. You've had a steep learning curve over the last 28 days, but I can tell you with absolute confidence, I have been in as desperate situations as you're in today.
Mm-hmm.
And that same not needing to be liked and firing people But we fire so many customers. I will have the conversation. I just had one last week. This guy wanted us to pave against concrete. He was pouring today. He wanted me to pave against it tomorrow. And I'm like, I'm happy to do that, but you got to sign a waiver. I can't be responsible for that. And he's like, no. And I said, well, you can find somebody else to pave it then.
Yep.
And that was $230,000. That was that contract. I'm like, dude, you can do, like, I'm not doing it. I've done this before. I've been down this road. It doesn't work out. And to me, it's not emotional. That's the key. When you can take the emotion out of the situation and make the right business move, people think pardon my French, people think you're a gigantic asshole.
Yep.
Right? Because they're like, why? You can't just abandon me now. I'm not abandoning you. Your choices got us here. I didn't do any of this. Right? Yep. If you can't pay us within 30 days, like, you don't go to McDonald's and order your food and pay them 6 months later. Right. You pay for it in advance, right? It's the same cycle. You don't wait 6 months to pay your mortgage. Why would you expect me, somebody that's net worth is like, down here, to be your bank? Yeah. It's baffling to me, and it's a problem that I think you're learning it. The bigger GCs out there, they all know, especially when times get desperate and money starts to get tighter, they can just take advantage of the most aggressive subcontractors. Mm-hmm. Right? The hungriest ones, they can just prey on them. And it makes me sick to my stomach to watch. And I think that's what you've learned over the last 30 days.
Yeah, because it burns you out. And how in the hell can you be successful if the goal is to burn you out? And I think they wake up in the morning and think, oh, what can I do today to, burn my subcontractor out? No. But how can you and I run a business, and I can almost guarantee, as much as I know that my husband and I do this, we sit and look, how do we want to show up in our company? How do we want to treat our employees? How do we want our guys to show up on the job? When we leave the job, what do we want that to look like? What do we want everyone to feel like in the whole chain from start to finish of this job? Our office staff, we want everyone to feel a certain type of way. So we work really hard to create that. How in the heck can they not stop and look at what the system that they have put into place, how that affects people down chain?
Downline. Yeah.
And then even when that person decides, like, hey, maybe I need to have a conversation with them, the defensiveness and the aggressiveness that I've had from general contractors when I tried to negotiate my contract terms is quite unbelievable. Really, quite unbelievable. And I hung up with a general contractor the other day and said, I'm going to give about one more conversation there. And if what comes out of that is exactly what just happened, there's no way in hell I will ever have a conversation with that person again. Like, you just will not be a customer of mine. Like, if that's how you show up and that's how you cannot realistically understand what you're asking of me and my company, then we have no business here together. And I don't expect people to show up and care about what happens in my company. But if you win, I win. If I win, you win. And that should be the mentality that in where we exist here in this whole.
Well, you're supposed to have accountability both ways. And that's the piece that that really frustrates me when you're working with these, I call them predatory general contractors, right? They want you to be held accountable for everything. We have this form called a QVF, a quantity verification form. So when I go to pre-con with a big GC, I'm like, hey, by the way, here's what we're going to have you sign every day for everything we do. And they're like, oh, well, what's that? And I said, it's just a way for all of us to make sure that we're on the same page. It's the number of tons, it's the number of yards of gravel, it's the square feet, it's the unit that we're applying to your project. And they're like, I don't know if we can sign that. I said, I don't know if we can do the work. Right? Like, you can't hold me accountable for the same thing that you're asking me to be accountable for if you're not willing to be on the same page. It's a triplicate. All I'm saying is that we did it. It's not saying you have financial responsibility for it, but here's what it does. At the end of the job, when we're overrun, because inevitably on all of these big jobs where you're talking about, especially the ones that get deep into the one comic territory, like you get up to $500,000, $1 million projects, a few percent on that is 50, 60, 70,000 bucks. And those GCs are like, oh no, that's an overrun. You have to eat. I'm like, no. We installed that. Here's the signature. Your site superintendent agreed that this is what's going to happen. And we informed him beforehand that this is the risk. And I can't tell you how many people we've been asked to leave the job from because I simply want them to sign for what we did.
Yeah.
Right. It doesn't say you're paying for it. It just says this is an acknowledgement of what we installed today. And it's just a gross double standard. Like they're killing people's legacies. And here's what I've learned. So like fast forward. So let me give you a little hope for my situation. You didn't ask for this. Today, we are a financial institution. We have line of credit. We have all sorts of things. Our business for a paving contractor, we judge a good previous year if I can get through the winter without touching my line of credit. Right?
Nice.
That's the like poor man's version of the financial review. Right? Are we in April 1st? Are we in the line of credit or are we not in the line of credit? That is how we know we had a good year. Well, today we have a line of credit that we don't touch very often, but it's taken a lot of years of retained earnings on those financial sheets for us to get there. We offer discounts. Like if you offer me a 2% discount, I'll pay you like in 5 days.
Mhm.
Like, but we've learned that because we have a little bit of margin between us and the desperation of cash, I can ask those subcontractors that are a little tighter. I'm like, I'll pay you exactly what I owe you. My payment terms are 30 days. We cut checks on the 5th and the 20th. That's and then that's the way our organization operates.
Mhm.
But if you want it in 5 days, I'm happy to run it. It costs you 2%.
Yeah.
Like, and there are a lot of guys that like, they'll wait for the 30 days normally and they'll call up and they'll say, hey, I need my draw. I need that. I'll give you the 2% this month. I need it today.
Mhm.
Like, all right, our check will be at the front office. Like I'll call it in right now. But
Yeah.
I'm not telling them what they have to do, but we've figured out, and here's what you can do. Like with a good GC, we have relationships with these people now. They can call me and say, hey, I'm willing to do this, but I got to get paid quickly. Is that an option? Can I put materials on your account? Absolutely. I know if you put them on my account, I know they get paid for, right? Because the CPA that sits on the other side of this wall,
Yeah.
she's like, hey, we got $200,000 in drywall that just came in and we don't do drywall. Why is it on our account? I'm like, oh, we're going to take that off the contract. Go ahead and pay that first. And they're like, oh, but we built a bridge with this problem. And I think that there's an opportunity in this moment for people to either build a bridge or a wall.
Mhm.
And the good ones build bridges and the bad one builds walls. And eventually they have to move markets. That's the piece that just boggles my mind. Like you're in Illinois.
Mhm.
How many millions of people are like, what size of market are you in?
I don't know. It depends, I guess. We're kind of tricky because we could be considered in a really rural area, but we're so close to downtown St. Louis too. We could be in,
Yeah.
and it's really where we want to operate. And truthfully, we like being on the smaller side at this point.
Yeah.
So, for us to go all the way into downtown St. Louis, our guys to take the trucks over there and the trailers and all that, it's sometimes staying on this side in the more rural communities is a little bit easier for us. So, it's kind of hard to say because we kind of dabble a little bit. We prefer to
But
stay
your
on
industry
this.
is pretty specific,
Yeah.
right? Like there's not 100 people that do what you do, right?
No, but
Yeah.
there are some decent, I would say, in our very small area. I mean, in St. Louis, I honestly don't know anything about any of the glaziers over there because we truthfully just don't interact with a lot of them. But the two that are on our side of the river that are pretty close to us, um, one of them is one of them's been in business for probably multi-generation, so they've been here for a while, so they just get a lot of gimme work,
Yeah.
just because they've been around forever. The other one, I would say he's quite a bit bigger than we are, but I think he's starting to get to the point where his jobs are so big that we pick up a lot of the smaller stuff,
Yeah.
which I don't mind that, to be honest. I
Yeah.
I like the smaller jobs a little bit. I think, those big jobs, as much as it brings in a lot of work for the guys and a lot of revenue, there's just a lot more on those projects than, I mean, we'll take them, but it
Yeah.
definitely is sometimes the smaller stuff is what we like to do anyways. So,
So like sitting where you sit today, knowing what you know, what's the one thing that other people should be aware of in these scenarios? Like if you could go back and tell your former self like 6 months ago, hey, Tara, don't do this because of fill in the blank. What would that look like?
it would be like you said earlier, take the emotion out of it. Very hard to do when it's your company and it's your families that you have to protect in your company. So it's hard to do that, but absolutely take the emotion out of it. Unapologetically negotiate your terms in your contract and understand what you're signing. Understand your cash flow and unapologetically collect your money and don't feel bad about that in whatever means that's necessary. And I don't mean, show up
Mhm.
at their office with some aggressive tactics, but I do mean, there should be no reason that I'm kindly asking for 4 weeks in a row for some answers and
Yeah.
I'm still sitting here with no answers. That absolutely should happen. And being new to the industry, I knew nothing about this when I walked into this position that I'm in. Not even close. I was in a completely different industry, not even close to this. So when I came into it, I had no idea. But I just think that so I very often just assume people would pay. But at
Gosh.
this point, I just unapologetically will not. I don't care if you're offended that I've had to call your office 10 times this week because I don't have an answer. That is what's going to happen.
Mhm.
you know?
So where did you come from that assumption came from? Like that people would pay their bills. What's your past?
Oh, I was a teacher for 15 years.
So your paycheck was like it was like something you could count on, like the calendar and the clock moves.
Every 2 weeks. No, never late, never anything. Every year, new contract, new pay, you know. Yeah, no, it was just a very different, very, very, very different world though, for sure.
My wife is a teacher
Mhm.
and she really struggles with the contracting world. She's like, why did things move out of our savings? Why did a large sum move out of our savings?
Yeah.
And it's why, like the conversations we've had, and our CPA came from, that works here at our organization. She came from a university setting. And so she was dealing with loans and student loans and not contractors. So like I tell her, I'm like, I appreciate and I love your perspective that you think everybody is innocent and they're doing
Mhm.
things with like all of the honesty and transparency in the world. But we are in the contracting space. Many of these people don't have a high school diploma, and ethics and morals are way down the list beyond that. We need to look at everything um, with a semi, like just this perspective that maybe there's something wrong. Like just with just a little bit of hesitancy to write the check.
Mhm.
And that was really hard for her, like to come into this world where she's like, why wouldn't people just pay their bills? And why would they send a bill that's not right?
Yeah.
I'm like, oh gosh, we have a long ways to go here. But, but
Yeah.
here's what I will tell you. You find a person like that, a person like you, their boundaries are really clear, right? She's like, oh no, what's right is right. And there is no gray area in that. And there's room for both. So so you would tell people to, I got a funny story. 20 years ago, Lewis, who still works here, he's 3 or 4 doors down. It was a big number at the time. It's probably $30,000 or $40,000, right? 20 years ago, that was a lot more than it means now. He, when their salespeople are paid on commission, right? As they should be. Like you make more, we make more. This guy was like, not paying, not paying, not paying. Lewis took his stuff, sat in their office, and said, I'll wait till so and so. I need to talk to so and so. And they're like, he's not here. He says, that's cool. I'll wait. And he gets out his laptop and he gets out all his stuff and he just parks in their waiting room, just like starts making his office in their waiting room. And they're like, what are you doing? He goes, no, I'll wait. It's fine. I'll just work here. It's cool. And he waited for like 7 hours until the guy showed up and he goes, hey, remember that time that you agreed to give me the check when the job was done like 3 weeks ago or 4 weeks ago? Well, today is the day we're going to do that because you promised me something that didn't happen. Today, you'd probably get in a lot of trouble for that.
Yep.
Um,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
20 years ago, before cell phones had cameras and before there was this thing called live, you could do things like that. But that same level of ferocity has to happen, right? Like we send out weekly updates on your interest statements. And and that's some of the stuff that as a small business, you have a hard time capturing the ability to do. But when we started adding weekly interest to people's invoices, our pay cycle went from like high 50s to all of a sudden we're like low 30s for days paid because people are like, oh crap, this is $200 a week. That's $30 a day. That's $900 a month. We
Yeah.
can't afford that. And I'm like, yeah, well, somebody pays the interest on all that, folks. Right? Right now, Tara and her husband and her family are paying that interest.
Yeah.
It's crazy to me.
It is. And people do not see it. And I think I think that's where I kind of came with my whole subcontractor project, with the idea of bringing everybody to the table to talk about it. Because if it doesn't affect you, if in this whole chain of people in the commercial construction space, from top to bottom, all the stakeholders, the lenders, the GC, the owners, the subcontractors, everybody in between, anybody involved in this whole thing, you don't really like realize how many people don't understand it because it doesn't affect them.
Yeah.
And I had sat on conversations with a couple of attorneys and the last couple of weeks leading up to me finally speaking out and saying the things I had to say. And there were attorneys in our state working with one of the biggest general contractors in the St. Louis area. And he did not even know the law for retainage in our state. He was speaking on it like it was something. And my attorney was like, whoa, man, back it up. Let's talk about that. What'd you just say? So they kind of did their lawyer talk. And it was very clear that he was like, oh, and he was like, tell me that statute again. And he's like Googling it while we're talking. And I'm like, you got to get out of here with that. That's crazy. That's who's writing their contracts. And they don't even know what retainage is. And the GC that we're having the issues of not getting paid, I spent hours trying to communicate with him and reason with him and everything. And he cannot see it from anyone's perspective, in my opinion. I can't say he can't but in
Yeah.
my experience, in my opinion of what the conversations that I've had, unwilling to say, let me think about how this might actually affect their company. Let me
Yeah.
decide, let me kind of analyze this a little bit. It's just a hard no. And I just started to realize very quickly that so many people don't know because it doesn't affect them. And I think I realized that from the teaching world too. So it's easy for me to kind of start putting a language to it because we have to have the conversations. And that's
Yeah.
exactly what led me to being here and saying, I'm going to keep saying it until everyone shows up here and starts having this conversation too. And that
Yeah.
really was what made me move in that direction, because it's just very clear that unless you are a subcontractor or have been a subcontractor, there's a lot of people like in the tech world now that owned companies before, so they get it. They're not there anymore. They lost their company and got into tech or, something to help support the subcontractor. But when you're looking at it from a lender perspective, or you're looking at it from a GC perspective, or even an owner perspective, it is very much where I don't feel like it is very owned up to what is actually happening to most subcontractors today.
Yeah. I think one of the pieces you just pointed out is huge. So the idea that the choice is binary is wrong, right? Both things can be true. Like the GC's perspective, while he has his, what your experience is simultaneously accurate, right? It's not just one or the other. And the people, and I think the best business people in the world have figured out how to bridge that gap, right? They're like, okay, what do we do to make people want to work for us as a GC? Well, number one, and this is what I've noticed, and as you get deeper and deeper into this, this AIA contract thing, like everybody uses the same general contract, and they hide behind software platforms like Procore and these, all sorts of other various sign-in. Subcontractor pays to be a part of it and signs up to then have the right to go work for you. It's detached people from relationship, right? Like you sign this, you check this box, you check this box. If you don't check this box, we sue you for the difference between your bid and the person above you's bid, right? And we become legal entities that are kind of, they're kind of held to this standard that nobody knows. And like you just said, those guys making $500 an hour, one didn't have any idea what the actual law stated.
Yep.
And that's super frustrating. I've said this before. So in our world, this is the Oregon standards specifications for construction. For those of you who can't see, that's like a 3-inch book. I can argue that book left and right, top to bottom, front to back, because I spent the better part of a decade knowing what it says, how it says it, what it's supposed to say. And when people say, hey, when an inspector checks something in the wrong spot, I'm like, hey, you can't do that. And they're like, what? I said, why don't you go grab your book and go look at 00744.6. I'm like, you can't test the temperature of the asphalt in front of the paver. It says specifically you have to test it within 5 feet behind the paver. And they're like, no, it doesn't. I'm like, go look it up. I'm not stopping. We're going. Like, I know I'm right because I've been down this road dozens and dozens of times. But if you're uninformed, you have no ammunition, right? The same, and that's what I love about some of the contracting world. Like when we get into the public side, they state like, hey, we're going to charge, you can hold our retainage, that's fine, but I'm charging interest on it. Like, and I'm charging interest from day one because it says we can do it. And they're like, no, you can't charge interest. And I'm like, well, if you pay it, then we won't. But you get 21 days according to my contract with no interest. And then I start accruing it. And then you are obligated to pay me on the interest that's accrued for the length of the time that you possess my money. And and I'm happy to shoot the email over that says, here's the statute, here's the case law that I will win. I will win. I will own this. You will pay me. And we will have a judgment against you in court, and it will be very transparent for the whole world to see. Or you could just pay the interest that you're obligated to pay. Right. But this goes back to, you don't know what you don't know. And that piece of information was because we lost $100,000. Right. We do things different today because we lost everything in 2009. That's the total truth. And I've had to tell that story. We filed bankruptcy in 2009. For those people out there who are looking at bonding, bankruptcy is like the black eye that you can never lose.
Yeah,
And
right.
right. And we're back.
Yeah.
We're back where we can do whatever we want because I tell the story well and I'm educated enough to have that story. But it only comes because I've gone through some really crappy stuff. Right. So what were the concerns when you went to public with this? What was the concern? Like, because you're sitting there getting abused, right? Getting beat up. And then you're like, I got to tell this story because surely other people see it. What was the thing in your head? They were like, I got to say this.
Well, I think I just happened to get to a point where I just happened to be a point in life. I always joke and say I'm a recovering people pleaser. You wouldn't believe that by my posts,
Yeah.
but a recovering people
They have a
pleaser.
program for that, right? It's
Yeah, and
Codependence Anonymous.
yeah. So I have worked on that for years at this point because it's just something personally I've
Yeah.
struggled with. Anybody who knows me knows I'm pretty open about my journey and all things. And I just happened to hit a place in life at the beginning of this year. So January 1st, 2026, I kind of hit a moment of, I had this aha moment of, I am tired of not saying the things when there is just really unjust things occurring around me. And I've always been the one to not say things, to not rock the boat, to not, you know, want to cause a problem, but I have realized over these years that it causes bigger problems when everybody stays quiet. And I just had this aha moment of it. And I know I have the words to explain it. I know I have this, I truly believe I have a God given gift in helping to take information and relay it in a way that people can understand. I think I have a God given gift in being able to walk into a room, meet somebody, and read energy in a way that is, it's just my gift. I don't know how to say it other than that. So all of that had kind of come at this point, and when all this started happening, and I realized the banker was tightening up on us, I realized the GC wasn't going to pay. I had this aha moment of like a toxic relationship, like you can't unsee it when you see it kind of deal, and your like mouth is dropped for like next week because you're like, oh no, what do I do? This is not okay. And I had all that kind of a moment, and I sat on my couch and I do not know why I woke up this day. It was a Thursday, I think, if I remember right. I woke up, I was very frustrated with the situation in our business. And so that day, it was pure anger. I was sitting there, I was angry as shit, and I had a lot to say, and I finally was going to say it. So I made my first post that day. I would say within 48 hours, my anger for myself turned into a mission because I started realizing, I realized the day I made my first post that I had something here and that people were going to listen if I had to something to say because they wanted to listen because they're experiencing it too. Since then, I've talked to hundreds of people. I've talked to people who have told me their story of their company and what has happened to them and where they came from. And when I tell you that my story is just one of millions, I believe out there, and because you have your own story, we all have the story. And and now it's turned more from anger where I was at just because of my company to I am feeling super pulled to keep speaking on this and to try to make a difference as best as I can because it's bigger than myself. It's bigger than my family. It's bigger than your family. It is literally the backbone of this country. And if we cannot find a way to support the companies that are building this country,
Mm-hmm.
you can, and so for me it's become almost like a mission at this point, just because of the people I've talked to. And I have promised people at this point. I've teared up talking to people a bit sometimes of their story. I've talked to people who run a $50 million company, but is at any given time at risk of going under because his cash flow is terrible. He says he has over 12 to 15 million in past due receivables at any given time. How can that be realistic, in a company that's doing that much business, and it's still, that's crazy. I've had people who said that, you know how the story goes where you put a lien on the company or on the project because you're not
Mm-hmm.
getting paid. It goes into the court system for years. By the time you're done paying your attorney, paying any fees, any issues that you had in your company, you might as well just say, well, I just did the work for free, because the time that you put into it, yeah, all the money, it's like $100,000 that you didn't get paid, but you're going to put $100,000 or more back into it to get your money,
Yeah.
and that's criminal in my opinion. And I just don't understand how we can be there. There's so many levels to it, so many things that need to change, but I cannot get over the idea that we just treat this industry that's I mean, it's a $2.1 trillion industry, and we treat it like it's no big deal. No big deal. You'll
Tara,
get paid when you get paid.
it makes sense that the ecosystem has kind of rallied behind you, and that's why I was so excited, because I knew like you were going to strike a lot of chords with Keith, given its like personal
Yep.
background and story. So it makes a lot of sense. I'm curious, throughout all the people that had reached out to you, was there anything you obviously said at the initial, and I'm trying to like close the loop here. You initially said at the kind of the middle of the podcast, you talked about a lot of people reached out, a lot of people gave you some tips and learnings and everything. Obviously, you've fast tracked all of your learnings over the last month. I'm curious, what are those top few things that outside of the contracts and restructuring contracts, what are some of the main things that, you know, gave you an epiphany that you need to start running your business in a different way?
Well, I think too, there's a lot of resources out there to help us, but you don't know to use them unless you know that they exist.
Mm-hmm.
And so I would say that one of the biggest things for me is just speaking out on this has really opened my eyes to the resources that truly actually do exist out there. And you do feel very alone as a subcontractor when you're in your offices working. It's so helpful to go talk to people who are doing the same kind of work,
Mm-hmm.
because you feel like you're crazy sometimes. You feel like, what is wrong with me? Like, how can this be a thing? But when you get out there and you start speaking to people, well, people will, well, that this is a problem, but I have this tool that can fix this one, or I have this tool that can fix this one. And it makes such a big difference just to even know the tools that are out there. There are programs right now that can help with negotiating contracts, software, so you don't have to have an attorney for every single thing. It's already out there, built for subcontractors, not for general contractors, not for vendors, not for,
Mm-hmm.
it is literally built for subcontractors so that you can put your contract in. It'll tell you where the predatory language is at. It'll give you suggestions, different options that you could choose to try to negotiate terms. That's huge in letting subcontract, because honestly, I'll be very honest with you. It's embarrassing to say this out loud. Like I said earlier, sometimes it's almost embarrassing, like the things we were doing. I didn't even realize I could negotiate a contract when I first started this company. I was just signing things because I thought, well, sure, that sounds good. That's $500,000. Sure, we'll do that work. I mean, we were literally getting contracts and looking at the the price to make sure it matched what our proposal was.
Mm-hmm.
And we were making sure that the scope was correct, because that is something that is, obviously if they don't have your scope correct and you're signing it. So we were smart enough to do that. But what I didn't know to do was to actually read through the contract, because in our proposal, we have it laid out very clearly that retainage on materials is not acceptable. That is not something that
Mm-hmm.
we will accept. Well, I was going through a contract the other day, and on page 47 of a 68 or 69 page contract, there was one little line that was in there that I never knew about. Because how do you know? You have to read it, obviously, but that was in there that said something along the lines of terms put forth in subcontractor's proposal are null and void upon signing of this contract. So when we signed the contract, anything that we had in our proposal,
Gone.
Yeah.
that's, so that part of it is kind of where I think that's the kind of stuff that really started giving me just to feel the power that this is my company and I can make the choices for this company and I don't have to sign this contract and I don't have to agree to those terms. And you don't have to agree to those terms either, general contractor. But that just means that we don't have business here together, And I think there's a lot of things I didn't realize as a subcontractor that I had been using traditional banking up until this point. I did not know that there are banking platforms in this world that will vet the general contractors for you, that
Yeah.
will run a business credit on them without them even realizing it. When I had someone do that for me this week, the two general contractors that I have the most problems with came back as massive red flags. The bank would not loan money for contracts for these contractors. Had I known that 2, 3 years ago, I would have saved myself so many problems, So going forward, it's going to look like we probably won't bid to any general contractors unless we've vetted them first,
Yeah.
It's just changing little things like that that make the biggest difference that we just truly did not know when we jumped into it.
We have a private investigator on
Oh,
retainer,
yeah,
and I call him and I'm like, hey, can you search to see if there's any active litigation with this company name or the owners or the people that are on the contractor's
yeah,
license?
yep,
And 30 minutes and it's probably $100. He'll come back and say, yeah, hey dude, like I'm going to send you this list. It's pretty extensive. Or say, hey, no, like there's a few things, but they're nothing major. Like they look pretty safe. They've been in business 30 years. So you're going to have some stuff on your record if you're in business for 30
yeah,
years. But the red flags, like those and they're not much. Like those background checks on businesses are 50, 60, $70, $80 once you
yeah,
establish a relationship with somebody. But they will save you it will literally save your life,
yes,
right? It'll
yeah,
save the gray hair that I got going down the side of my face here because
yeah.
I'm like, how did we get in this scenario? Right. That's
Hmm.
the question that I ask on a regular basis.
Yep. And I
Um,
think I'm going to go the direction that you're going with starting to charge interest. And I actually just recently hired a bill collector for the commercial part of it. He goes after GCs all the time and he's helping me write the language into my contract so that I can charge them for the fees that are incurred for him if he has to get involved. But it's to the point of I have to take myself out of that part of it because that's the other thing. I have a company to run. I do not have it in me to spend all day chasing money from people. I just need you to pay your bills. Just please pay your bills. Where is the money? That's the big question. Where is the money?
so as we wrap up here, I got a question for you.
Yes.
If the payment structure doesn't change, where does the industry land in like 5 years?
Mm, it won't be pretty at all. I don't think it'll be pretty at all. I think, it's been tough. It's a tough industry in general. I think there's so many uncertainties with being in a recession, with what that looks like for us. So in the next few years, I think it's just generally going to be tough as it is. But I just don't know that we are giving new companies an incentive to want to be a part of this. There's just so many different industries that probably offer a little more of a financial cushion with not nearly as much risk. And I personally I had honestly not considered this part of it before I started talking to all the people that I've talked to in the last few weeks, but I will tell you that there are quite a few people who wholeheartedly and people who are helping me with this and getting behind the scenes with me to help because they truly believe that it is a national security risk. Because if you don't have good people who can build the infrastructure of our country, you have
Mm-hmm.
nothing. And that is a
Hmm.
huge, huge, huge problem. And so I honestly had not even considered that until after many conversations. I'm like, whoa, that's actually a pretty valid point. So I don't think we have any option but to get it to change. And I think that that is why the reform needs to happen. And that is why I think, um, I kind of started this, but I will also tell you this. When I started this a few weeks ago, I had told myself, I will do this until I have to. It'll probably be 5 years before I can make a difference, but I will absolutely do that. I stand here today and tell you differently. There are so many things being done and in place that I think it's much closer than many of us anticipate it being. As long as we can get the buy-in from people. That's the biggest thing, is
I
getting the
think
buy-in from everybody.
I have watched, so we're not the old guard, right? None of us on this screen are the old guard. Like the good old boy system, everybody knows when you say that what we're talking about. As the guard changes from the good old boys to the next generation of leaders, which is mostly millennials, right? Like we're the
Yeah.
people that are kind of on the leading forefront of the leadership in these organizations. I believe when those old guards finally pass the torch, there's going to be some sort of unwinding of what the old guards accepted as the status quo for decades and decades and decades. Because back in the day, you could run checks from bank account to bank account to bank account, and you could create margin. Today, if you give somebody a check, it's literally out of your system, out of your bank account in moments, right? I think that a lot of the things that we've been using that you're talking about specifically are archaic, right? And I think that moving forward, there's going to be some form of reform that happens in the industry, but it's only going to be when enough people get pissed, right? It's only going to be when, we collectively stand up and say, we are not doing this anymore, right? There's power. And the crazy part is we are all on the forefront of the single largest industry in the world, right? We are infrastructure, but we are the best at infrastructure in the world, which is the value of the United States economy, is the infrastructure. And until enough of us stand up together and say, yeah, no, I'm not good with this. You can't bankrupt us, and you can't hold us hostage for the things that you created the rules for in the first place.
Yeah.
You can't move the goalpost all the time. It doesn't work like that. I believe you're right. I think in the next few years, there's going to be some fast tracking, and there's going to be some things that happen that the banks are demanded to give the money up faster. Because if not, we're going to go from the top of the system to slowly start working our way down the system where China and these other countries can surpass us. And if that happens, we're all in for a world of hurt, which is an entirely different podcast.
Yeah, you might need a couple for that one.
Yeah, but I think you're right. I think reform is coming, and I think that it's going to happen when enough people that are millennials or younger stand up and say, yeah, this isn't right. Like we can't do this any longer the way we've been doing it, right? Because it costs so much more to live today than it did for the good old boys. Like you could buy a house with 1 year's income. Who can buy a house with 1 year's income now?
I know.
Right? Like things have changed and everything is stretched like to the seams where it's bursting. And I think you're right. I think that soon we're going to watch things start to shift. And the people who are on the forefront are going to be the people on the tech side that have the resources you have and are connected. And I work with a ton of contractors, and I'm like, hey, this piece in your contract right here is going to get you screwed. You're going to die a painful, slow death if this thing stays in here on a regular basis.
Yeah.
And I love the input. I think it's great. I admire where you're at and for speaking out, because it's scary. It's scary to have an opposing viewpoint to the world and to stand up to people that have, let's just call them a position of power or authority over us. So I applaud you. Thank you for speaking your mind. And I'm really grateful to have met you.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much. I just feel so much about, I told myself when the day that this happened that I might take the Total Glass, my company, my subcontracting company, might take a brunt for me speaking out, but I don't care if it makes a difference for other people as a whole. We've already been through enough in the past few months. What's a few months more?
Yeah.
We'll get through it. And I think honestly, when you do speak up and you're honest and you're kind and you're intelligent about what you say and you're trying to actually be helpful, people do listen and people do want to help you make the change. You just have to be willing to say it. I might have some ramifications for a few months, but I believe that it will develop better relationships in the long term, which is honestly what I'd rather have anyway. So
You're not wrong.
You guys had so many hot takes on here. I knew that I was going to bring Tara on. I'm like, Keith is going to get so fired
Yeah,
up about
I have a
this.
bunch of notes that I wrote down. I was like, hey, we got to clip 43 minutes in because that was nice. Like I'm like, I went to go push the button and then she said something else and I wrote 44 minutes.
Yeah, I'm over here doing that too. Like I have several things on my little notepad. I'm like, I'm just gonna not say anything, and this is clip.
That's what yeah,
Well, I love that
it
you
was
guys
really good.
found something in there because honestly, well, this is my first time, so I don't know exactly, how to go about it, but I do know how to talk pretty good, so I can handle that part.
Listen, you have as an orator and a communicator, you have a leg up on 2/3 of the industry.
Yeah.
Like to be able to take and speak things into existence and for you to say them in a way that people can understand. You do that and you can take the emotion out, you have like the sky's the limit. That's what great leaders do. And you're like 2/3 of the way there.
Ah, thank you. I appreciate that. That's such a compliment. Thank you.
Tara, thanks for coming on.